Talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing for you today. We are a consulting firm. We are here to guide Centriq into a new network topology that's going to suit their needs. Okay. So what we're doing today is we're going to analyze the physical environment of Centriq based on some of the discussions we've had with you, the stakeholders. We're going to talk about your logical needs and tell you what we can do network-wise to implement like I said, a topology that suits all of those needs. We're going to take a project management approach to this. So what we're going to do, what we've already done is meet with you, stakeholders, and we've kind of defined your scope. Learned a little bit about your company, what you're going to be doing in the company. And we're in the design and presentation phase right now. So based on the input that we got from you guys initially, we have kind of got a roadmap for you. What we're going to do is take the feedback we get at the end of this presentation, and we're going to revise our plan, represent it, and then establish some deliverables for you, some time frames. We're going to then implement the product and implement the network for you. The final phase will be just monitoring and maintenance, making sure you guys are up and running still. We'll make sure that there's a business continuity at the end of this. So what we're doing is a top-down presentation. Okay, we're going to analyze everything from the top down. We're going to just kind of start broad and just narrow it in a little bit for you. First thing we're going to talk about is the physical and logical environment. So we're talking about the business organization as a whole and the logical environment, how we're applying that network to you. It's going to be involved heavily with Active Directory, and they're going to discuss some of those terms a little bit later on down the line. So if something is unfamiliar at this point, just you'll definitely we'll expand on it as we go along. We're going to be doing all on role-based groups, and the server-side supporting roles are going to support those role-based groups. Talk a little bit about group policy and disk quota, the IP scheme and DHCP, again some terms you'll learn a lot more about as we go along. The WAN interconnectivity, the 3 offices here in Centriq, and we'll talk a little bit more about the physical structure for those that have been around. We're going to talk about the file server resources and how we can make sure that everyone's got the same files, got files to share. We're going to talk about your perimeter security as far as the network goes, firewalls, backups, internal securities, internal firewalls. We're going to then finish it up with just some questions and a recap. So without further ado, have our first presenter up here.
Thanks, John, and thanks all of you for joining us tonight and giving us this opportunity to present our project. I will be talking tonight about the physical and the logical structure of Centriq. And also I'll be talking about Active Directory. Centriq currently has 3 locations. Right there. We have locations in Kansas City, which is Centriq's headquarters. We have locations in Phoenix, Arizona, and we also have a location in Tampa, Florida. Each location is going to employ about 1,000 people and occupying a 5-story office building. The Kansas City location will have a 6th floor where Centriq is going to house their human resources and their accounting departments. Together, all of the Centriq's locations will be members of a single domain. And what that means is that all the locations will be a part of the domain, and that just enables everybody to share their resources with one another. Actually, let me put this slide here. Okay. Each location, Centriq will have 1,000 host computers that will be distributed across 5 subnets, and actually 6 subnets in Kansas City, because the subnets actually are floors of the buildings. And they will have multiple printers and laptops that will be assigned to particular individuals within the company to enable them to remotely access the network. And actually Colby will be talking a little bit more about how we do that. To start, Centriq will have, in each location, will have 6 servers. They'll have 2 domain controller servers, which actually I'll get into a little bit more in depth about those later. They'll have 1 file server, which is going to store all the files and folders and all our data. There's going to be a router, which is going to enable connection to the internet through our internet service provider. and there's going to be 2 DHCP servers. And those DHCP servers will dynamically assign IP addresses across the network. And actually Dorian will be discussing DHCP servers more in depth later. And the other thing I want to talk about tonight is how we're going to manage all these users and computers. And if you recall those domain controllers I spoke about earlier, there's a service in a domain controller called Active Directory, Directory Services. And the reason why we have 2 domain controllers, both having Active Directory in them, is because Active Directory is pretty important. And so those 2 servers are going to replicate each other. So if one server goes down, the other one can continue Active Directory service. Active Directory, what Active Directory does is it organizes and manages all users and computers on a network. And it assigns them into groups and to organizational units. The users and computers within Active Directory are referred to as objects. So basically, like if a TeleMericorp administrator assigns different policies and different permissions to the resources on the network, those resources, like, for instance, like a shared folder or a printer, will be able to be shared to the particular groups and to the particular organizational units that people are a part of. And like an example of this would be, like, let's say in our environment, we're a call center. So let's say Joe Smith, who's a Tier 2 call center employee, gets to work, sits down at his computer, and he logs on using his logon name and password. And Active Directory is going to take that information, authenticate Joe Smith as a user and an employee of the company, and then it's going to authorize the different resources that he needs to effectively do his job. And the cool thing about it is that he's only going to get the resources that he needs, because we don't want Joe Smith to be just everywhere on the network doing whatever he wants. That'd be a bad thing. And that's another reason why Active Directory is so important. Because if you just have one Active Directory and the server goes down, then you have a bunch of people that can't even log on to the network or can't access any of the resources that they need to do their jobs. And so that's why we have 2 domain control servers that are replicating each other. And that's about it. And I would like to introduce Zach here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Derek. All right, guys. My name is Zach Maggiorato. I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we set up our Active Directory. In our Active Directory, we use organizational units to provide a more easily navigated structure to better organize our groups, users, and our computers. I would say refer to your packet, but if you want to just look at this picture, it'll kind of show you the Active Directory that we have set up. We have the tac.local at the top. Underneath that you have all the sites contained in an organizational unit, which is called sites. And then the 2-letter designation for each site, AZ, FL, and HQ for the Kansas City headquarters. And then inside of each department you will see a plethora of users that are designated for said department. And then here is just a blown-up version of a single user and some of the account properties that are set. As far as OU delegation, we gave that full control solely to the IT department at the domain level. So they will be the ones that are able to control the organizational units and how it's set up and who is put into what group. Now to help make setting the permissions easier, we used AGDLP. For those of you who are not familiar with this, it stands for Account Global Domain Local Permission. In using AGDLP, we take a user or computer account and we put them as a member of a global group that we've created, and then we insert that into a domain local group to assign specific permissions. Essentially what this does is it makes it easier for setting permissions for a larger group as opposed to going in and trying to set permissions on a more singular scale. And then also it allows us, if we ever expand to multiple domains, it allows us to do so since there are global groups already set up. So to create all these users, instead of going through the GUI, as some of you guys may be more familiar with, we wrote a script and saved it as a batch file and executed that batch file. It allowed us to add all 3,000 users with some relative ease. And it allowed us to also do a few other things. Some of those are creating their login name, their display name. We made sure to embed them in the proper department, and then also allowed us to set up to where when they log on for the first time, they automatically change their password. So a small security function that's going to be brought up more with the GPO. I think that's about it. Troy's going to help you with GPO.
Good evening. My name is Troy Smith. I'm going to be here to give you a brief overview of group policies, group policy objects, how you can implement them, and basically what they can do for you. A group policy is basically, it's a layer of defense that you can use for your domains, for your users, for your workstations. Kind of sets you up to tailor a group policy to what you need. For those of you that aren't quite familiar with group policies and how they work, any Star Wars fans in here? Any? Okay. The old Star Wars, we had Darth Vader, and what did he build? The Death Star. Okay, what did he have around it? He had a force field. This to protect the stuff inside, to keep the stuff from getting in from outside. Okay, if you have a little problem, say something gets in, what happened? We come in, he dropped a bomb in, boom. Okay, so it's Monday morning, you come into work, and you want to listen to some tunes. Okay, so you go out to the internet, you download your files, your music, click, hey, download. Guess what? Now you've opened it, and it's on the bad side of the firewall now. It's on the inside. So now, bad things happen. With group policies, it's just a layer of protection that you can use. You can implement them, tailor these as you need them. There's group policies out there for just about anything that you can probably imagine. But there again, it's a layer of defense that you can use. You can stop your user from going out there and downloading things. You can stop your user from bringing stuff from home and plugging it in. That's what group policy is designed for. You tailor your group policy, you go in and you tie it to your organizational units, and then everybody that goes in that unit, it populates to them. As you can see up here, these are just some of the ones that we've tied in here that we use for this particular project. Group policies are going to be tailored for more what your needs are. Based on this project, this is what we set up. As we set everything up, we started out trying group policy to do our disk quotas. Disk quota on group policy can be done. Let's actually change this body, I apologize. Group policy can be done, or I'm sorry, disk quota can be done through group policy. It requires a lot of work. We set up our limitations for our space, our warnings for our space to let our users know when they're getting close on their space. Again, disk quotas are set up for what each department might need based on their usage. We went with the default for 85% for no warning. Okay, if you go through disk quota, or I'm sorry, if you go through a group policy to do disk quota, then that ties up one of your IT guys. They're going to have to sit there and watch your viewers, and if the person gets close to their disk quota, then they're going to have to actually physically notify this person that, hey, you're getting close. On a company this size, not going to work. That means that guy's going to be sitting there doing that all the time. And I don't think anybody in here would want to be doing that. So, but a much easier sort of deal. It's a much easier way to do quotas is through the File Service Resource Manager. You can go into that and you can actually tailor your individual files for your disk quotas, and each one of those you set your quotas on, so whoever accesses that, that's where your quotas come from. So, and on that note, to make it easier to go back to the hard part earlier, with the file service resource manager, you can actually tailor that and set that up so it sends your user an email to let them know, hey, you're running out of space, you might want to think about that. So pretty much that's everything I have for quotas. Hopefully it enlightened you on some of the other things.
Hit the next slide.
Dory.
Hi, my name is Dorian. I'll be talking to you guys about DHCP. What is DHCP? It stands for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. Basically what it is a mail system for computers. DHCP will assign IP addresses to each of your computer in the system. And by doing that, it is essentially the same thing as putting that mail number on the outside of your house that tells the UPS guy, FedEx guy, to deliver that Amazon package to your house. Computers need the same thing to communicate with each other as the internet and server. And we have 2 DHCP servers set up in our system for fault tolerancy. We have those set up. We have those set up in a split scope. A split scope allows us to have one machine take most of the brunt of the load, and then the other machine will take some of the load. We have it set up to where one machine does 80% and the other machine does 20%. We have our system and your organization set up for future growth as well as ease of organization. Each floor can handle up to 254 clients. As you can see here, there's a lot of numbers, but it's actually simple once you understand. Our first subnet here is the hardware. This will be your DHCP server, your domain controllers, your Active Directory, and your file servers. And then it's the same through all. It'll be the 0 subnet, so 10.10.10, 10.30, 10.50. And then if you look onto the next one, you'll notice 401 has a 1 for the 10, and it'll be 11, and 31, and so forth. Now on these subnets, we've excluded the first 20 for hardware. And the reason we've excluded those is for things like printers. Each computer is going to need to know where to go to find the printer. You don't want the printer's IP address changing. So we've statically assigned those, which basically is an address that you assign that does not change. And then we also have reserved the very last address in each of these subnets to the 254 address, so 10.10.10.254 would be for the gateway. And each of the computers need to know the gateway to get out of the room, because computers, unlike us, can't just look around and say, oh, that's how I get out of here. The computer actually needs to know where the gateway is, and that is what the gateway is for. And we also have our wireless set up on the very last subnet. And the wireless, we've allowed for room to grow. It's the very last subnet. So as you can see, it's 29 in Kansas City, 49 in Florida, and 69 in Arizona. And we've done that because if in the case we ever do need to have more wireless, we can just count backwards and we won't be flashing things at the floor levels. And it still keeps that organization in place. And lastly, we have a scope option set up to where the default DNS system will go to our first domain controller and our second domain controller. And then lastly, it'll go to Google in case both of those didn't go down in a tragic fire like we had at KC. Now, I'd like to move on to Colby as he talks about RS.
Good evening. My name is Colby Gatlin. Thank you for being here tonight. As Derek mentioned, I'm going to be talking about remote access and how each network communicates. RAS stands for Routing and Remote Access. Let me ask anybody here, have you ever worked for a company and say, for example, you needed to work from home and you needed to get access into the company's internal network? Anybody? That's how it's done right there. Routing and remote access. There's two, how it's configured in a Windows server, and what that basically, when you configure it, what it does, it manages that network routing for that network. There's two primary services for routing and remote access. Routing, which is basically responsible for forwarding packets from from one subnet or network to another network with a different IP addressing scheme. And the second one is remote access. Basically, with, like you guys said, if you're working from home, it allows someone to work from home to gain access into the company's internal network. And there's also with routing and remote access, there's two different types of connections. These connections, one is VPN, which is a virtual private network. The other one is a dial-up network, which we're going to talk about that one because we've implemented a VPN connection. This is kind of a diagram. Here we have Kansas City, the headquarters. We have Arizona, and we have our Tampa location. Different networks. And VPN, how VPN works is you have Arizona here, and say you want to connect to the headquarters. You have your internet here, crosses through the internet. Well, what VPN does, a virtual private network, it's a point-to-point connection where you can securely go through the internet, a public network, to an internal network. Right here, what I have is I have an example. It's a tunnel. It provides a tunnel through the network or through the internet, so people can't access information that's being sent through that tunnel. Here we have a site-to-site VPN tunnel. Here we have a mobile user. So say, for example, someone is, if you have someone in sales or if you're working from home, you can access the internal network from home or through your computer. And what we use is called a tunneling protocol. And the tunneling protocol that we use is L2TP. And that's basically what we use to connect over the internet. That's it. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to have John talk about file server.
All right, everybody. So up until this point, we've been talking a lot about interconnectivity, right? But one of the most important things on a network, in my opinion, is probably how you access files. It's kind of, the bread and butter of your business at some times. So what we're going to talk about is how we implement file servers and different other server functions to incorporate that functionality for your business. So we're going to talk first about the design considerations for a file server, the physical machine that does it. Okay? We've decided to go with a standalone server, so it's not going to be running as an integrated part of, like, say, a domain controller. It's all its own machine. The form factor of it itself is going to be, we're going to be using redundant arrays of independent disks. And to kind of break that down simply, we want a couple things when we're considering file servers. We don't want to lose our data. We don't want these things to go down. We also want them to be fast. So with a RAID configuration, or that redundant array of independent disks, we can accomplish that. We're going to probably do the same, we're going to do the same thing for all of our servers here. We're going to configure it in the same manner, and that is to have a RAID mirror drive for the operating systems. So what that does is you got two disks, and it accesses one disk. Anytime anything's written to one disk, it's just copied to the second disk. So if you lose a disk, well, it's fine. You can work off your second disk until you're back up and running. Until you pop another disk in there and it rebuilds the array. Now with a file server, the data portion of it, we want it to also have that speed capability. So we've decided to give you guys a RAID 5, which is disks that have distributed parity on it. What that means is each disk, no less than 3 disks, has got a little bit of the backup information on each disk. So theoretically, if you're running with mechanical hard drives, which are fairly inexpensive, and it's a decision we've decided to go with here, you are kind of limited if you think about like a record spinning. You're limited by speed on how fast that record is spinning. So you got 3 of these disks. You're theoretically reading and writing off of these disks quicker than you would if you were just writing off of reading and writing off of a single disk. With that, if one of the disks goes down, you can simply everything will still be up and running until you place a new disk back in there and it rebuilds the array. So it's continuity of business. Everything keeps working. It's a very efficient system. Like I said before, the cost of mechanical drives is relatively cost prohibitive. You're not going to the risk versus, not risk versus, the cost analysis benefit is not gonna benefit you really to go into like a hybrid drive or anything, or excuse me, not a hybrid drive, but a solid state drive. For your file servers, we may want to consider hybrid drives depending on if the speed you're getting from a RAID 5 array is not fast enough. All right, so as we spoke about, okay, so folder redirection is another function that allows us to access our files, essentially. So we try to think of what happens if something goes wrong. So if you're working on a workstation and you've got all of your files stored locally on that workstation, say in your desktop or a My Documents folder, and something happens to that physical workstation, without something like file redirection, all that data could be lost. File redirection enables access on demand, so it stores all of the user's files, specific ones, My Documents, desktop, onto a file server. So this is all configured through group policy. And what this does is allows, like I said, if that workstation goes down, you just log into another workstation, your credentials are forwarded through, and you now have access to all of your files which are stored on that redundant array on the file server. So obviously your benefits, same files, multiple workstations. We're also going to have shared folders over the, it's going to be role-based shared folders. Say for instance, all of sales needs to access similar resources. Well, as they were speaking about before, these can be set up through group policy and individual folder permissions to allow individual departments, say sales, to have access to those shared resources on a file server. So, all right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the interconnectivity of these file systems. So, like Dave mentioned before, we've got 3 offices here for TeleAmericorps. If I am in the Arizona office and I want to access my files from the headquarters office, we need something to kind of simplify that for us. We don't want to be trying to connect to a file server in headquarters in Kansas City over the WAN while we're in Arizona. You've got too many hops when you're involving, the internet providers. There's too many links in the chain, something can go wrong. You're going to incorporate a lot of latency, and on a large organization such as ours with 1,000 users per site, you're not going to want all that traffic going over the internet. So what we're doing is we're doing distributed file systems. Okay? So what that does is it basically allows for copies of those file servers to be replicated to each location. This is done, it's constructed in 2 manners here. There's namespaces that need to be considered, okay, which is essentially just a virtual file structure for the file servers. This is a domain, so it makes everything a lot easier when you're talking about distributed file systems. Everything is distributed by Active Directory. So the important part is the replication aspect of it. And that's when we're talking about these geographically separate locations. A couple considerations we have to make are how often is everything replicated. As a default, we're kind of going with a 4-hour replication cycle. But the good thing about this is we find out that we need resources replicated more often than that 4 hours. It's folder specific, so we can set a specific folder to replicate, say, every 15 minutes or whatever instance we need for that. So this covers a lot about, like I said, some of the bread and butter of our business, and that's why I wanted to talk to you a little bit about file systems today. So, our next presenter is going to be Charles. He's going to talk about firewalls.
Good evening. I'm here to talk to you guys a little bit about firewalls. Windows Firewall, it's a software component for inbound and outbound filtering. It helps protect against hackers, viruses, worms, Trojan horses, and spywares that is trying to reach our systems. Windows Firewall also helps block all inbound connections except the ones that we established, like that's what you're saying with us being able to, if you're remotely trying to chime in, you have to know the end address before your Windows Firewall won't let you in. So you can be, if you're at a Starbucks, there's people from Starbucks who's just trying to hack into our system, which also if they hack into your system, costs businesses money, so that's what's one of the points of Windows Firewall. And then, I'm going to talk a little bit more about, see, it protects against all the viruses and Trojan horses and spyware. And it's a barrier for the trusted and untrusted. backups is just what you think it is. Backups is just a copy of all our critical data. It's a copy of all our critical data that's stored, often like on an external hard drive or on a server to keep from any type of disasters, say fires, or if anybody once again hacks into our system and we have to go in and wipe it all out, we can restart it. That's what the backups is for. We're using an off-site company at all 3 locations to do our backups. And the reason we chose to do all 3 different locations in their own off-site, because like headquarters is Kansas City, we could send all the information to Kansas City, and then it's just back up from there. But like once again, what Dorian was saying, when Kansas City went up in flames, now we just lost all 3 sites. So this way, if we're able to just back up at each location, the 2 companies can keep still running, making money. Because it's all about making the money. That's what we're here for. We're backing up once a week to the off-site companies. It goes, all the computer information from every computer runs to our servers. And then what the off-site companies backing up is the servers. It's all the critical data that's going to those servers. That's what they're backing up instead of each computer. If they did that, it's a lot of money. It's really a lot of work. So it's a little easier going straight to that server than just backing the critical data off of the server itself. And then also, with shadow copies, it's like another form of backup. That's where it's, when we're doing within the company, it is it takes copies or screenshots of your system. The first time you do a shadow copy, it takes a full copy of all your data. And then after that, it takes screenshots. Because how we have it set is we have it set 3 times a day at 9 a.m., 12 p.m., and 4 p.m. And what this is like if it takes a full copy at 9 a.m., when it comes to 12 p.m., it's not going to take another full copy. It's only going to take from the 9 pass. So it takes the change of it instead of all of it all over again. And with this, we also have, it allows you to manually do it. You can manually do it. You're working through volume shadow copy services. It allows us to manually go in and do the backups, or you can automatically set it, like I said, for how we have it set, is for 3 times a day. And that would be everything on backups. And now we're on to Dorian, who is going to close it for us.
Alright, and that's our presentation, guys. I'd like to thank you all for coming out, for you guys that didn't have to be here. Appreciate you showing up. We will open the floor for any questions.